Nobody knew he was coming. The courtroom had already seen its share of surprises. Celebrities walking in, media flashes outside, whispers swirling like smoke. But this was different. This time, it wasn't a star chasing headlines. It was a storm, walking in a human frame. When Ice Cube stepped through the doors, the atmosphere flipped. You could feel it. The kind of silence that only shows up when people realize they're not ready for the truth. No bodyguards, no flashy entrance, no warning. Just Cube, folder in hand, face unreadable, and a walk like he'd waited 2 decades for this moment. He didn't glance at the cameras. He didn't acknowledge the murmurs. He just moved forward, slow and deliberate, like a man who already knew exactly what he was going to say and why it would break the room. "I wasn't invited," he said. "I volunteered." Then came the words that cracked open everything. "I'm not part of the club, and that's exactly why they fear me." You could almost hear the collective breath leave the room. Cube wasn't talking about a nightclub or some Hollywood clique. He meant the club, that invisible structure everyone whispers about but never names. The one that doesn't care if you're rich or poor, black or white, famous or forgotten. It only cares about control. It feeds on silence. And it demands obedience. He said, "They don't recruit you because they like your art. They recruit you to own your voice, and if you won't hand it over, they try to break you." He didn't speak like a rapper. He didn't speak like a movie star. He spoke like a survivor, a witness, a man who had seen too much and finally decided to say it out loud. He turned to the jury and said the name that made even the judge flinch: Jamie. He didn't say the last name. He didn't have to. According to Cube, Jamie Foxx wasn't just a casualty of fame. He was a target, a test subject, someone they tried to mold and punished when he resisted. Cube described it as a pattern. First, they shower you with praise, then they offer opportunities that seem too good to be true, and slowly they start taking ownership of your life. One decision at a time, one deal, one party, one late-night call. They treat you like family, Cube said. Until you say no, then you become a problem. Cube then described a moment that sounded more like a movie than real life. Jamie received a call from Oprah Winfrey. She told him he was losing focus, that he needed help. But the help she offered wasn't spiritual guidance. It was a meeting, a private sit-down with Quincy Jones. The courtroom shifted again. That name had weight. Cube said that Jamie went into the meeting thinking it was mentorship. But it didn't feel like that. "He told me it felt like a test," Cube said. "Like he was being prepped, like they were measuring how far he was willing to go." The words they used? Responsibility. Legacy. But Cube swore it was something darker. They weren't helping him. They were handing him off. Cube claimed that Quincy Jones wasn't just a legend, he was a handler. Someone who moved behind the scenes, arranging the unspoken transactions that kept the machine running. What Jamie experienced that night, he never explained fully. But Cube saw the look in his eyes. "He didn't have to tell me," Cube said. "I knew he'd seen something he couldn't unsee." He claimed that Jamie was invited to exclusive events, black SUV pickups, basketball parties where no phones were allowed, and security lined the walls. But what happened at those parties had nothing to do with basketball. They were observing him, Cube said, testing his limits, seeing what he'd accept, and what he'd walk away from. And when Jamie didn't play along, things changed. Rumors started circulating, press coverage shifted, roles began to dry up. And then the health scare. Cube paused before saying it. "Y'all think that was random?" he asked. "A man in peak shape collapses on set, just as he starts pulling away from them?" The implication was clear. That wasn't a coincidence. That was punishment. And then it got worse. Cube explained how the real power wasn't in fame or money. It was in what they collect: videos, recordings, pictures, files, moments you didn't know were being captured. He said, "They don't ask you to do something wild, they make sure you're caught doing it." One actor, unnamed, allegedly woke up after a party in a hotel room, confused. A contract was on the table, pictures on his phone he didn't remember taking, footage sent to his email with no sender ID. Now he does whatever they ask, Cube said, because he has no choice. Cube shared that he had been invited to one of those events once. Early 2000s, no flyer, just a time, a car, and a voice telling him, "It's important." He arrived at a mansion in Beverly Hills, phones taken, security everywhere. Low music, dim lights, whispers. It wasn't a party, he said. It was a vetting. He saw someone, an artist he admired, slumped on a couch, eyes open, camera trained on him. "I left," Cube said. Didn't say goodbye, just walked out. The next day, a blocked number called, "We saw you leave." He never returned. Cube's voice lowered. He looked straight ahead, not at Diddy, not at the jury, but at something only he could see. A memory, maybe, a warning. "You ever wonder why some stars just vanish?" he asked. One year they're headlining films, the next they're ghosts. No scandals, no farewell tour, just gone. He called it the deconstruction process. They don't just blacklist you, they unmake you, slowly, publicly. According to Cube, Jamie Foxx's decline didn't start with his health. It started with refusal. Refusal to play along. Refusal to let them shape his image. Refusal to give them control of his name, his voice, his soul. And when you refuse, Cube said, they replace you. First come the rumors. He's difficult. He's unstable. He's not the same. Then the casting calls stop. Then your name stops trending for the right reasons. Cube described how even Jamie's closest allies started disappearing. Longtime collaborators stopped answering. Scripts got stuck in development. And then came the scariest part. That clone shot? He paused. People joke about it online, but that's what they want. Confusion, doubt. You don't know if he's real anymore? Good. That means the mission worked. They erased the original. And just like that, Cube revealed the real power of the club. It wasn't in fear, it was in disappearance. They don't kill you, they rewrite you. Cube stepped forward. No script, no hesitation. "This ain't about Diddy," he said. "It's about the machine he represents." He looked at the jury, then at the prosecution. "Y'all think this is about music, about parties, about some wild lifestyle. But it's not, it's about culture engineering." He claimed that the club doesn't just manage artists, it manages ideas, what people admire, what they chase, what they imitate. You think that's your favorite song on the radio? Nah, that's an assignment. Cube explained that entire genres are cultivated to feed specific industries. Music that glorifies violence, incarceration, degradation. It isn't a coincidence. The same people who push prison music own the prisons. The room gasped. He let it hang in the air. "That's what Pac was trying to warn us about," he said, "before they silenced him, before they made him look erratic, before they scrubbed him of the politics and just made him a poster boy for rage." Cube wasn't done. They don't want you rapping about healing, about building, about legacy. That gets labeled corny, weak, unprofitable. He alleged that multiple artists with spiritual or community-driven messages had been sabotaged, studios raided, accounts frozen, laptops hacked. Because art is powerful, and when it's not under their control, it's dangerous. What held everything together wasn't Diddy's charisma or Quincy's reach. It was the silence. A carefully maintained web of fear, pressure, and complicity that stretched far beyond the courtroom. This wasn't about one man pulling strings. It was an entire ecosystem built to protect the club at all costs. A machine where publicists, agents, stylists, journalists, and executives each played their part, whether they admitted it or not. Most never gave direct orders. They didn't need to. Their silence was the agreement. Their inaction was the signature. Behind every scandal that got buried, every artist that vanished from headlines, every whisper that never became a story, there was someone who looked away, not because they didn't know, but because they knew exactly what would happen if they spoke. This is how the club keeps its doors locked. Not with chains, but with favors, NDAs, and opportunities that vanish the moment you say the wrong thing. Someone gets invited to the wrong party. Next thing you know, their manager pulls them from a film. A singer backs out of an exclusive deal. Suddenly, rumors surface. A missed rehearsal becomes erratic behavior. A mental health break becomes unfit to perform. A personal tragedy becomes unstable. There's no need to threaten anyone directly. The system handles that automatically. A call here, a headline there, a role recast, a feature pulled. Even fans play a role, unknowingly. The public eats the narrative it's fed. He's not the same anymore. She's crazy now. He fell off. But no one ever asks why. What happened to that director who was about to expose the industry's rituals? What happened to the rising actor who refused the deal, then vanished mid-press tour? What happened to the spiritual rapper who suddenly lost label support despite millions of followers? And what about the blogs, the media, the ones who cover every celebrity breakup and TikTok beef in detail, but somehow always miss the deeper patterns? That's not an accident. That's design. Even the courts in many cases don't see the full picture. Because the real damage doesn't leave bruises. It leaves gaps. Gaps in careers, gaps in memory, gaps in the public record. When Jamie Foxx started to pull away, the machine responded like it always does. Deals disappeared. Directors backed out. Suddenly, the press didn't know where he was, but the gossip columns were full of theories, none of them true, all of them useful. Because the goal wasn't to punish him loudly, the goal was to make him fade, to turn a living legend into a question mark. And around him, the silence grew. His co-stars didn't speak. His collaborators went quiet. Even those who knew the truth kept their distance, not because they were heartless, but because they were scared. They'd seen what happens to people who talk. Because in this industry, silence isn't cowardice, it's currency. And those who break it don't just risk their careers, they risk everything. The judge asked if he wanted to make a final statement. Cube nodded. He stepped away from the witness stand, walked slowly to the center of the courtroom, and turned to Diddy. "You built a kingdom," he said, "out of other people's silence. You called it success, but it was slavery." The courtroom froze. "You didn't throw parties. You built prisons, emotional ones, psychological ones, and you filled them with people who thought they were being celebrated. But they were being captured." He turned to the gallery now. To every artist watching this, to every kid chasing a dream in music or film, ask yourself, who's standing at the door of that dream? And what do they want from you before they let you in? He paused. "I stayed quiet for years. Thought it kept me safe. But silence doesn't protect you, it makes you a collaborator." He opened the folder in his hands, pulled out an old photo, a young ice cube, fresh-faced, full of belief. "This was me in 1991. I thought I could change the game, thought I could keep my soul and still make it." He tore the photo in half. "That version of me didn't survive. But this one, the one standing here today, he ain't afraid anymore." He returned to the stand, looked at the judge. "I don't know what y'all will do with all this. But now you know. You all know." And finally he turned to Diddy. "You thought nobody would talk, that you had it locked down, but now the door's open." He stepped down, didn't look at the press, didn't look at the crowd. Just before walking out the door, he turned his head slightly and said, "They didn't kill Jamie, they didn't kill me, they just made us louder." And then he was gone. But what he left behind was just beginning.